How do we disagree better, Ron?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a couple things for me personally. It's, can I respect you first before we get into the conversation?
Mhm.
Do I have a genuine respect for you as a human being that has an opinion? No, and authorized to have an opinion, and it can be different from mine. But I start with the place of, can I respect you and do I care about you?
And welcome back, everyone, to the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. This is David Fung here today, and I have a special guest today. His name is Ron Harvey. He is a leadership coach, speaker, trainer, and facilitator, and the vice president of GCS Consulting. He's also a retired U.S. Army veteran with more than 34 years of leadership experience, and his work focuses on helping leaders build winning cultures where, as he puts it, people always matter and also just make a difference. Ron, welcome to the show today.
Hey, David, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited about our conversation today, and to add value to all of the people that are listening. Thank y'all for joining us.
Yeah. So why don't we dive into it? I'm looking for those of you who are not on video. There is a bookshelf right above Ron's head with a number of things. First of all, there's the flag there. I guess that speaks to some of your service to the military, right?
Yes, it does.
Yep. 34 years, you said, right? Or sorry,
Yes, 20,
23
20,
years.
yeah, 21 years in uniform.
Okay. Okay. What,
Yes.
what, what did you do in the military?
Yeah, I'm 21 years of Army. So I started off in combat arms. They call it artillery. And moved in there to what we call special weapons, nuclear biological weapons, and moved away from that into a recruiting command as I went higher in leadership and spent a bulk of our time in helping young people figure out if the military was a good option for them in their endeavors once they came out of high school.
Okay. Okay. So pretty low key, easygoing stuff, nuclear warheads and biological weapons, easygoing stuff. Nothing that spikes the adrenaline. I see where you're going with this, Ron. So, but in all seriousness, my friend, when I spoke with you on your podcast
Yes.
a couple of weeks ago, we talked a lot about leadership. I love to dive more into how you see the world and how you see leadership and how you see people. I think the two famous quotes that you have is "People always matter,"
Yes.
and like the book that's above your shoulder, "Just make a difference." And I'm curious, what makes those significant for you in how you see the world?
Yeah, so David, I think that's part of why I joined the military. Early on is I was raised in a family that was into politics, into religion, into advocacy. Into to serving throughout the community. I was raised around it the entire time. So I would say for people, it's in my DNA, and it took me a while to figure out why I would make some of the decisions I make that weren't necessarily what every person at 17, 18 were doing. And it took me a while to figure out that I always was raised to see all people from all walks of life with all backgrounds and not necessarily agreeing with who they were, but respecting people in general. And that just became very significant to me. So it made it easier for me in the military. It made it easier for me when I'm in communities. It made it easier for me when I was in uncomfortable situations or I disagreed. So it plays a huge value in how I show up all the time because I just honestly value everybody regardless of whether we're alike or different.
Okay, so how have you applied some of that to like you work with a lot of organizations, both
Yes.
government, private sector, public sector. I guess how have you applied some of these principles that you talk about and help to build leaders?
Yeah, I would say, because it's a philosophy for us when I first started. I had to actually figure it out. I knew I had the passion for it. I knew I cared about it. And I struggled at framing it into actual activity and actions and what do I see. So now what I've learned over the years, I've learned that, me understanding and valuing all people, I listen better. I don't try to fix things for people all the time. I can respect them even when I disagree with them. I can look out for their best interest versus just the bottom line or the profit margins, if you will, or get it my way. So it allows me to see people for who they are, not just as someone that's helping me get what I want to get done. And so when I think about leadership in general, if you can really just appreciate people versus tolerate people, you tend to get a lot more done in a respectful manner without all of what political party or what race or what gender, or, all those things that we see on the surface that tend to get in the way. I see people as people.
Hmm.
And how do we work together and collaborate together to get things done?
Yeah. How do we disagree better? You know,
Yeah.
there's certainly look. Here's the reality. I think there's a lot of word, things repeated out in the media, like, oh yeah, this is very polarized,
Yes.
charged, blah 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 blah.
Yes.
Uh, you know, yes, and I don't think this is the first time in the humankind where things
Yes.
have been polarized. People disagree. Like my grandparents who lived through World War II and such,
Yes.
they probably say, no, actually, it was nearly the end of the world in World War II, right? For
Yes.
them,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think disagreements and polarization is not the first time in
Yes.
America, North America, or Europe or anywhere. That said, I think it's a skill though to disagree better
Yes.
versus hiding behind a keyboard, which is, and it's getting worse, I think,
Yes.
with this abstraction through technology. Dude, I just read about like AI girlfriends, boyfriends
Yes.
in the news article, like a Telegraph or something like that. But it was weird. So, anyways, sorry. My original question, all that preamble, how do we disagree better, Ron?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a couple things for me personally. It's, can I respect you first before we get into the conversation?
Hmm.
Do I have a genuine respect for you as a human being that has an opinion? No, and authorized to have an opinion, and it can be different from mine. But I start with a place of, can I respect you and do I care about you, just in general? And if I can get past those two things at the end of the day, we don't have to see it the same. And I'm open to that as long as, the person that's sitting across from me is open to us not seeing it the same, but looking at what are we trying to get accomplished together versus what I win and you lose. Because nobody, honestly, David, I don't want to lose. Who shows up every morning and say, I want to
Yeah.
lose? That's not reality. But I'm willing to compromise for the greater good of what it is that we're trying to get done. And sometimes
Hmm.
that means it goes my way, and sometimes it means it doesn't go my way. So I think I disagree better when we can come to something that's in, it's almost like my wife and I, when we got married, we agreed that everything that we would do, we would stand beside each other and do it with each other versus face each other and make it almost like this competition between us. So I really have, you know, been afforded the opportunity to stand side by side with anybody to say, what are we really trying to get done? For what reason? What are the challenges? What do I 100% approve of? And where the areas where I'm going to struggle at because I'm not 100% on board. So I had those open conversations. I think the one thing I do really, really well is I always try to figure out, how do we get to a yes? Like in everything that I do, how do we get to this place where we can keep moving? And I honestly work on that all the time in everything that I do. How do I get to a yes?
You mentioned the one of the foundations of your approach there is fundamentally respecting the other person,
Yes.
and I'm feeling that that's where a lot of the disagreements break. Like the art of disagreeing breaks down right away. Is that there's a lack of respect that an individual or group of individuals might have for the other group on the other side that they disagree with. Is the lack of respect. And I'd love to unpack that using your podcast name. Unpack that. Right.
Yes.
By the way, check out Ron Harvey's podcast called Unpacked. But let's unpack that if you don't mind. I swear I didn't plan that. Okay. I
Appreciate
swear
it.
I did
I
not plan
appreciate
that.
it. It
I'm
is
like, wait, hold
perfect.
on. That's his podcast.
It's perfect, David. I'll take it.
Free advertising right there. No, in all seriousness, unpacking that respect. And I don't know if there's a science or art to this, but how do you respect someone? I've never even thought of that myself. Like, how do you respect someone, right?
Yeah.
Who could be an adversary to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenal question because, so oftentimes we'll say something, but we don't say, what does it actually look like? How do you actually do it?
Yeah.
And it's like when people say, I want you to just trust me. And when ask people like, well, what is that? What are you really asking for? When you ask me to trust you, what are you really asking for? What does that look like? So when you think about respect for me, I want to see a behavior or something that I can actually observe without you telling me that you're doing it. So when I think of respect, it's not cutting people off, listening to them completely, asking more questions, not being defensive, and totally being tuned in with them. And I often will rephrase what they said. I will say, hey, David, let me be clear. This is what you're saying, and this is your position. Let me get that correct. So I want to make sure I totally heard, because sometimes you hear what you want to hear versus what they really said.
Hmm.
And I want
Yeah.
to be really, really patient with people and say, let me make sure I'm processing and heard exactly what you said. And it's for me, it's not even for them, it's for me to make sure that I'm not putting any of my biases in place. I'm not making any accusations or unfairly changing their wording. So for me, respect is listening, paying attention, asking questions, and being totally committed to the conversation.
Yeah. And I would add on top of that, because I've worked with individuals over the years where they did all that externally, but
Yes.
you know how you can feel when I don't think they really care. Like
Yes.
they're listening, but and they're parroting, they're mirroring what I'm saying. There's something I'm feeling in this conversation. I don't think this gentleman or lady actually cares what I
Yes.
have to say,
Yes.
right? They're looking for something, right?
Yes.
They're looking for an angle somewhere, and I think that's fundamentally, like, now that you're saying it, that respect. It's all those things you said: the listening, the repeating of like where you are, the understanding. But are they actually truly trying to understand your position versus they're just looking for an angle? Right? An angle of rebuttal, or angle of to take advantage of you, an angle to manipulate you. And you just feel it. Like, we're humans, right? Like, we've been around the block. Like, you just feel that, right? And I don't know. That's what I'm thinking right now, because I've worked with enough people like that. I'm not feeling it from this guy. You know,
Yeah.
he's
I
just
think it
trying to
happens.
find a way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it happens. I will say for me, and some people will agree with it and disagree with it, and I'm okay with that. And I'm okay. I'll tell you, I'm totally okay with people disagreeing. I say it's okay if
Hmm.
you disagree. Matter of fact, I hope that if there's something that you don't agree with, that you voice that concern with me in a respectful manner versus just go along to get along. And I
Hmm.
think that part of it, because what I don't want you to do is halfway in and halfway out because you weren't able to speak up freely about what you agreed with or disagreed with. So I give people permission for them to totally, say whether they're on board or not on board, but also say, give me that same opportunity to disagree in a manner that we can still talk about it and keep it moving. But I 100% that, and that's where the word committed comes from me. If I'm committed, I'm only committed to stuff I care about. So me committing to something, like when you asked, "Hey, can you come on my podcast?" It was easy, yes, and I was going to commit. Say, "Tell me what you want, when you need it, how you need it. What is it? What is this for you, and what should I be doing for you?" I'm asking questions to be of service to you because I want to be 100% committed to it. So for my commitment is my care piece, and I tell people if I don't care about it, I'm probably never going to commit to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the commitment, and speaking of commitment, like, I do want to understand a little deeper,
Yes.
unpacking again, just making a difference. Like, you did mention, like, some of your early days and how that was significant in your life and the life of service. But I guess, like, when you say just make a difference, like, why is that so important? Like, why is that so important to you? And how do people who are trying to make a difference make a difference?
Yeah, I think why it's so important to me is because I think as a society, I struggle with people self-serving. I struggle with people doing it just for what they can gain. I'm a business owner, entrepreneur, and I always tell people I don't want to show up just for money. And I want to be compensated, but I'm not chasing money. I'm not saying how do I make the most amount of money and then stash it over here and become wealthy and rich off of things that we do. That's not what I do it for. So for me, it's like I show up because what is it that I can do intentionally to make life better for someone else? Whatever that looks like, whatever situation they find themselves in. And if I find myself doing things that's not having an impact, not making a difference, if people follow me and they look at who I am as a person, I've even noticed like I have this common theme about who I am, and it's not intentional for me to write the next book or have the next podcast. I love to unpack stuff, just ask the real questions, have real conversation, real dialogue in a respectful, productive way. I love to add value to people and make a difference. I love to have some kind of an impact. Everything I do, I want it to be measurable where we can see the results at the end. So there are two things I say. I don't say right or wrong, David. I'll say, is it effective or ineffective? If it's ineffective, I'm probably not going to do it. And I want to be able to measure it, not for Ron Harvey's measurement, but for what's the cause, what's the purpose, what are we trying to accomplish? I want to measure it and say, because if I can't measure it, honestly, I struggle at doing things that I can't measure. I say, if I can't measure it, why am I doing it? If it's worth doing, it's worth measuring.
How do you measure intangible things, like qualitative things?
Yeah, I think for me, so when I say, it just make a difference. Sometimes that make a difference is making someone see the value in themselves. Sometimes that's making a difference in people seeing that you see them and appreciate or tolerate. I tell people, I use that language a lot. I say, you can literally tell the difference when someone appreciates you and they're tolerating you. And that's very intangible, but you can feel it. It's like you said earlier, like, I feel like this guy really doesn't care. He's just like looking for their angle to manipulate, to get what they want. And those things, when you say just make a difference, when I walk in rooms, people say, hey, the one thing about you is you're very authentic. And when you're with one person, you're with one person. And I'll be in places and I'll do a keynote, David, and I'll be standing there signing books, and there'll be a line. And I intentionally do not look at the line. I just look at the person in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell them, say, hey, I got 2 minutes. I do have a line, but I'm gonna give you my full undivided attention for 2 minutes. And then we've got to move the line along out of respect for the rest of the people. So I want the person in front of me to know I respect them for that time frame of 2 minutes, but I don't want them to take up longer because I want to respect the other people that's waiting patiently as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so I intentionally plant that seed so they'll know, hey, I'm going to give you this, but I also want to respect everyone else. And that's
Yeah.
very intangible.
Yeah. Yeah. That when you're talking about measuring it, what came up for me immediately was like I've been asked by some clients recently was how do you, or and prospective clients is, hey, what's success in this program, right? Like, what's success for you, Dave, right? And I think come from the corporate world, you're like, oh, some people are immediately thinking, oh, he's going to talk about revenue uplift or cost savings and all that. And I'm like, look, I'm a numbers oriented guy, but what I'm trying to do here is something that's in service to that outcome. And that's, success to me is you seeing behavior change, right? The how, like how people are executing to get to that quota, to get to that number, to get to that cost saving, how they're doing, whether it's growing a team or letting go of a team, it's how they are doing it. And are they doing it in a way that is authentic and aligned to values? That's how I see success in my work, right?
Yes.
And but I say that as a statement now to get your point of view on that.
Yes.
Like when people ask you, when and the listeners here who are listening, like, well, what's the value of your coaching, your consulting? Yeah, there's a number side, but what's the real, like the true long lasting value here?
Yeah. I think it'll go back to, for me, for coaching, is understanding the people always matter piece. I'm going to tie it always back to every time that I'm working with someone, I talk about the people component of it, because AI is phenomenal, but it'll never replace the feeling of I care about you. It'll never replace I hear you and I see you. It'll help you get things done faster. So when I'm working with a leader, like yesterday with the organization, and the president and the CEO says, I want you to come in, and he wanted to understand the question. I say, to be quite honest, that's a question that I'll have to ask you. What do you want it to be like after I walk away? At the end of the day, I spend 90 minutes with you and your entire executive team. What are 3 things that will, a year from now, if you saw it happen in your organization, you'll feel like it was a great investment? And he laid it out. He says, I want us to be one team, one company. We're operating in silos. I want us to realize that things are changing fast and I need them to continue to learn and educate. And I want our executive team to work better with each other internally, because we do great with external customers, but we're not doing as well as we can with each other. I say, awesome. I'll be able to help us talk about what's our role and our responsibility without pointing fingers at the people that may not be happy about it. Like, what's my role as a leader? Because coaching is not about making your team better. It's about making you better.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so that's the goal is, and when they walked out, I'm like, man, you added a lot of value to each one of us about where we fit in. And being authentic and being transparent and being vulnerable in those moments, because people will see us as leaders and coaches and experts in this space and think we always had it together, or we always got it together. I say, yeah, I wish I did. I made a lot of mistakes. The
Mm-hmm.
beauty is
Yeah.
I'm okay with being transparent about those, and I'm okay with and willing to learn from someone else that may have been doing this for a year. So I think you got to be able to be in a partnership of what does winning look like for us when we do it together versus do I have the magic wand and I walk in with all the answers. I tell them I've never walked in with all the answers to any of my clients.
Yeah. You mentioned mistakes. What are the common mistakes you see still happening after so many years doing this? Like the repeated mistake over and over again. What is the common mistake you're seeing in leadership?
A lack of listening. of chasing profit margins, overlooking people for expediency, wanting to get things done a lot faster. And one of the things I see more often now than not is doing a really good job externally for your clients external, but not doing as good of a job in making your team feel like they're just as important as the clients that we serve. That is a huge disconnect right now, where companies are doing well at client facing, but internally the team feels like they don't care as much. Like the customer is more important than the person that's serving the customer.
So what are some first steps you take with teams then, right?
Yes.
To start them like, okay, hey, you do great. Your customers love you,
Yes.
but you don't love each other.
Yes.
What are some steps you take with these teams to help them realize that and start fixing this on their own?
Yeah, the first thing I do with a phenomenal question. The first thing I do is I have, I'll use a small team of, let's just hypothetically say 10 people, executive teams. I start with the executive team first because I think everything starts at the top and rolls down. So I start with the executive team and I'll literally walk in the room and say, hey, the first thing we want to work on is us. Is that okay with you guys? And they're like, absolutely. I say, great. Write down the name of every leader in the room that's at the table. And they will write down everybody's name. And I'll say, beside their name, I want you to write down 2 things that you appreciate about them the most. That makes your job easier.
Mm.
The things that they do. Great. They write down the 2 things. I say, write down 1 thing about each person that you wish they would do better that will help you do your job more effectively. Where's the disconnect at? And then I say, okay, guys, we're gonna do some vulnerability here, but we're gonna start with the CEO because the reality is leaders go first. So I'm gonna ask the CEO or the highest person in the room based on position or title, will you be okay with being vulnerable with us? And I give them permission to say yes or no. And then they say, yeah, I say, pick anybody in the room that you wish to pick. And I want you to speak directly to them and not to me. Tell them the 2 things you appreciate about the most and the one area where there's an opportunity for them to add more value to the team. And I let them do 30 minutes of that in that room. And you'll be amazed how many times they've never, ever had those conversations.
Huh. Interesting, huh?
Very interesting.
Very
because
interesting.
the good part is they probably heard the part about where they feel like there's a gap at, but they've never heard the 2 things of what they appreciate about them the most. Because we're quick to tell people where we're disappointed. We're not so quick to tell them where we're happy.
Yeah. I was talking with a fellow leader the other day, and what I appreciated about him when I worked with him was he was quick on both sides, quick in appreciation
Yes.
and giving and publicly giving appreciation, and quick and also saying, hey, I'm seeing a gap here.
Yes.
Right. Quick in both. Whereas like you also see the
Yes.
right, the one side of those, all they talk about is everything that they see wrong with you and your team and everything, and then the other side, everything's great, Ron, everything's good, and you're like, that's impossible, everything is good.
Yes.
Like a toxic positivity, they call it, right?
It
Actually,
happens.
have you ever dealt with an executive team like that?
Yes.
Like
yes.
toxic positivity?
Yes. They never address real issues. Everything's always good.
How do you deal with that? Because we talk about like, it's almost like the negative side, you try to get them to see the positive side, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
reframing things. But I guess, how do you get people to reframe like the toxic positive side? How do you get them to
Yes.
reframe, how they think?
Yeah, I mean, for us, and it does happen. I say, hey, if there was one day throughout the last 30 days, or one thing that you could have done better, or the team could have done better, what's that one thing? I mean, I think you guys are. I'll use Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, is known for outstanding customer service. Very, very, very nice, very pleasurable. My pleasure. That's who they are. And when you talk to an organization that's how they always operate, and that's their goal, I just ask them one question. I say, hey guys, your goal is to always say my pleasure. Phenomenal. Do you always achieve it?
Mm.
And they pause. They say, no, that's our aspiration. Tell me about the moments you didn't achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
That will help them reflect versus say, tell me where it went wrong at. I just asked them in the reverse order of, do you always achieve it? And they couldn't say yes to it.
Yeah.
I say, awesome. Well, share the moments where you fell short of achieving that. What happened? What would you do different? How would you make sure you can achieve that one thing? So I just let them reflect and answer an honest question. If they would have told me, yes, we always achieve it, I'd ask them if they would have been honest about it.
Yeah. It sounds like a common theme is it is that collective vulnerability, right?
Yes.
And people see that as weakness. It's not weakness.
Yes.
It's a kindness,
Yes.
right? The vulnerability in saying, hey, what I appreciate about you, also here's where I feel there's a gap
Yes.
with, what, the behavior or whatnot, right? Now I'm curious though, because now this sparks the question. I've seen teams that are on either polar end of these
Yes.
things, too negative or too positive, and they start doing the work to try to, go somewhere towards the middle. But guess what happens? They'll shoot past it, right?
Yes.
Or they'll
Yes.
find a leader that shoots past it. Like
Yes.
toxically positive team. Well, let's hire a guy who's just like down to earth and right, like I'm going to tell you the truth, Ron. And
Yes.
all they point out is all the dirt and all the crap you don't accomplish. And like, I want to have real conversations and challenge each other. And they go all the way to the other end,
Yes.
which is toxic negativity. And I've seen that on teams, right? Like they do this wild swing. How do teams keep themselves in check so that they don't shoot past this happy?
Great question. I mean, I'll tell you the language that I use for that on the David is I say, hey guys, the one thing I want to ensure is that we don't go in a 180. That's not healthy. So let's I see where we are, but before we figure out where we want to be at, let's say where we don't want to be at on the other side of the spectrum. We don't want to go from we're very critical and destructive to everything is always good every single day and everything ever goes wrong. So let's not lean that far. We don't want the pendulum to swing all the way to the right. Where's the sweet spot? Where's the sweet spot where we're not acting like it's always great, but we're not always acting like it's broken? Let's figure out the sweet spot. What would that look like? And you'd be amazed how many people have never thought about the sweet spot. They've literally thought all the way extreme to the left, too positive, or always to the right. We got to always critique and fix and correct and direct. Yeah, that's not healthy either. I don't want to feel like you're correcting me and directing me and fixing me all the time, but I also don't want to feel like, we'll always got it right because then I may not work hard to grow because if we're so good, where's the growth opportunity?
Yeah. 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 Asking them, where's the sweet spot?
Where's the sweet spot?
Where's the sweet spot? And then I'm guessing it's, gut checking regularly, like how are we doing in terms of hitting the sweet spot? Right.
Yeah. Another thing I do too, David, and this is good for the people that are listening, and it's easy to apply. iPhone has been out now 18 years, and their version number 17. iPhone recognizes that every year they must get better. And so when someone says that they got it all together, they don't need to change, I say, iPhone changes every year. What version are you? And if you're still the same version and the world is changing around you, give it 2 years, you'll be behind. So we're always looking for the opportunity to upgrade. So I said, we constantly have to upgrade. Even in the work that you and I do, we have to upgrade.
Yeah. Yeah. I was chatting on my podcast with a gentleman yesterday, and we were talking about your worldview. So the one of the things I've been really into is like just looking at Arthur Brooks. He's a social scientist, and how he talks about happiness. The 3 elements of happiness are, meaning, enjoyment, and satisfaction.
Yes.
And one of the things I really look at is meaning. Now, if you deconstruct how people seek meaning, and this is like, there's a psychological model called the tripartite model of meaning. Yes, I read about it. And it's really 3 elements that humans inject into meaning. It's significance. So you got to feel like what you do and your existence actually is significant in the world and significant to others. Purpose. So every day you feel like you have some purpose in what you're doing, right? And finally, coherence. And that's a fancy word for how do you, what's your model? What's your mental model of the world? How do you see the world, and how do you make sense of things when things are, come out of the blue, good things and bad things? How do you make sense of it? Some people turn to religion. Some people turn to philosophy. I think most people turn to a combination of all of that, right? And we talked about how that coherence part, how you see the world, needs to constantly be challenged.
Yes.
Your beliefs, what might have worked even a year ago, even 6 months ago, it goes out the window, right? You got to constantly challenge your beliefs and sit down in quiet time and ask yourself, is this applicable anymore? Does this apply? How do you keep yourself from becoming stagnant there? in your world, like your worldview of things, right? Because that informs how you see everything else.
Yeah, I'm doing it today. I mean, going on podcasts, letting people ask me questions, and you refer to our podcast, Unpack. I constantly unpack my thoughts every day.
Mm.
I constantly, like my core values. If you ask people where they get their individually, where they get their core values from, usually it's from their church, their community, their families. And I always take and bump up against those and say, are they still the same?
Mm-hmm.
Because the way my parents, the world they grew up in, how they were raised, my grandparents, life has changed from the world they live in to the world I inherited to the world that my kids are going to inherit. My core values have adjusted and they're not identical to what my parents were. So when I look at the world, I'm looking at what's relevant, what's important, what matters to me and who I am as a human being and what I want to be known for. So I'm always challenging my own thoughts, my own behaviors and what's important and relevant. And I don't just automatically carry the water of my ancestors. And
Mm-hmm.
I never
Yeah.
have. I'm always
Yeah.
saying, I get why my parents did it. I totally understand it, but the world is different for me. And what should I carry?
Yeah. Yeah. We were watching a movie the other day. So we were watching a movie the other day, and but it was definitely one of the parents saying to, saying to the son's soon to be bride, right?
Yes.
Saying, oh, you know what? You're not going to fit into this family because, if you're going to be part of this family, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. And it's just how it is. It's
Yes.
just how it is. If you're pursuing your own passions, you're not going to be good for this family. And like that was the mom and the grandmother's belief.
Yes.
Like, you must do this because they went through that. They
Yes.
sacrificed a lot, but it was a different time, right? Their generation was a different time. Now you have the opportunities to pursue your passions, right?
Yes.
Because you're not going through war, you're not going through those hardships. You can't put that on your children.
Yes.
You can't put that on your children.
Yes.
So it's the classic. I'll tell you a story. My dad, the classic joke is like, I walked when I was your age. I walked uphill both ways to
Yes.
school without shoes during the winter, during the biggest snowstorm ever. First of all, you're like, bullshit, right? But I remember my dad used to say that a lot when we were kids, and then one of his friends said, yeah, that's you growing up. Do you want your kids to be like that? Do you want your kids to have no shoes? Do you want
Yes.
your et cetera? Like,
Yes.
and the answer is no, of course not. Then why do you keep talking about it?
Yes.
Your kids have the means. Your kids have a nice house and nice family. Like, stop talking about your days, right? Like,
Yes.
it's not applicable anymore.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that I do. I mean, what's applicable, what's not applicable.
Yeah.
It's still, I think the challenge sometimes is still paying honor to where you come from and what your ancestors went through. I pay honor to that all the time. I know the history of my entire family, but I also don't live in that space of history. I always say, if this is what they did, this is how they were. It's like in marriages. People, talk about, the women, being just as educated, just as smart, adding as much value. I say, there was a time when women couldn't be educated. There was a time when women couldn't be in corporate. Like, why would I put my wife in a position that she can't be a leader in the household or she can't, be a leader in the organization? Life has changed. She can be educated now. She can be in corporate. She can run an organization. There were times when women couldn't do that. So I don't measure my wife on what my mom couldn't do or could do. I measure off on who we are and where we are as a woman today.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly this is a conversation that's worth a podcast on its own, is around protecting. There's another gentleman I had a podcast with, Dwayne Smith, on his podcast too. We talked about protecting. Like, what are you protecting?
Yes.
When you don't want to change.
Yes.
And usually you're protecting something about yourself, your identity. A lot of times there's something you're trying to protect and you don't want to let go of it because you feel that if you let go of it, it destroys how you think about yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But I read it, but there's a quote I read recently from another person I follow, right? They go to, I'm not a Christian or anything, but I love this story about, remember Lot's wife?
Yes.
From Genesis.
Yes.
So you're aware of that, right? Where basically, as they were retreating from the city, God was like destroying it. He said, don't look back. And the Lot's wife looked back and she turned into stone or something like that.
Yes. Yes.
It's a metaphor. You can't, as you're destroying the old self, you can't look back. You got to just keep moving forward. right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
it's a
which is
metaphor
amazing.
for life.
Yes, I think it is. I think we can use one for common day for people that may not be Christian, and use that one. When you're driving down the road and you're in your car, you have this big old windshield going forward. You're making progress.
Yeah,
We don't drive a car looking in the rearview mirror. So why do we keep taking life on looking in the rearview mirror of where we've come from? I think every now you look and glance to make sure you're safe. And but you spend 80% to 90% of your time looking through your windshield versus your rearview mirror. And I take life with that approach. What's ahead of me versus what was behind me? And every now and then I use that for reflection moments and how and what we've accomplished. But I don't spend my time looking in the rearview mirror. And I never have.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you want to know where you come from, look at who you are now. If you want to know
Yes.
who you're going to be, look at who you are now.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
well, Mr. Ron Harvey, it's been a wonderful chat. Time has flown by.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you the last question I ask every guest is, how can the listeners here find just a little bit more joy in their life today?
Yeah. I would say spend time with people that you really value. Cut out all the spreadsheets, the work and all those other things that you do in life. Those are things you do. Get to know who you really are and the people are that are around you. That's super important, because all the other stuff is, we're going to talk about our family, we're going to talk about our wives, and we're going to talk about our job, and we're going to talk about degree. Those are things you do. If you really want to find joy, become connected with who you are. What matters to you, without adding all those other things that you've accumulated over the years. Who are you? What really matters to you? If you had to introduce yourself for 1 minute and you couldn't talk about your family, your education, or your career, what would you talk about?
Mm, yeah. Is that a question to me or just?
No, that's just in general for our listeners. Yeah, for our listeners, just take the test. But it's important because most of us will struggle for 1 minute
Yep.
talking about us.
Yep. I go back to another guest I had because it seems like it's all comes in bunches here. The one question she hates the most was, "What do you do, Ron?" It's like, don't ask someone like that is what they do. It's not who they are.
Absolutely.
Right? Don't ask what do you do, it's who they are. And it's more like, hey, what projects have you been working on?
Yes.
What are you looking forward to?
Yes.
Right? That's more of a glimpse into who they actually are.
Yes.
All right, my friend. Well, it's a wonderful 40 minutes with you.
Thank you.
Time has
Thank
flown
you.
by with you. And thank you very much, Ron, for showing up today. So if people need to find you and see what Ron Harvey is up to, what's the best way to get in contact with you and see what's up?
Yeah, David, thanks for having me. And for everyone that's listening, the easiest two ways to find me will be LinkedIn. You go to my LinkedIn profile, you'll find me on LinkedIn as a primary social media that I use all the time. And then go to my website, on www.gcs.consulting. Don't put a .com behind it. And it'll show you everything. It's the easiest way to find me, connect with me if you want to schedule time with me. Those two ways, LinkedIn or our company's website, are the two easiest ways to connect with me and learn more and connect with us.
All right. Well, Mr. Ron Harvey, thank you very much for showing up here today. And thank you for making the time to speak to my audience. And for everyone who's listening in and you've, fast forwarded all the way to the end here, thank you very much for hanging in there. And thank you very much. If you love this episode and you love this podcast, just click the subscribe button, smash the love button on that, on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or whatever platform of your choice. And we'll see you next time on the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. Ciao. That's a wrap on this episode of the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. I'm David Fung, and my mission is to help leaders grow, lead with impact, and build thriving teams. If you found this valuable, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow leader. Until next time, keep leading with purpose.